In March of 2020, we invested our first $1,000 into the stock market.
Today, 21 months later, we've been able to turn that $1,000 investment portfolio into a $126,000 portfolio.
And in this video, we wanted to go through the story of how we did it and kind of explain what our thought process has been, at least up until this point, regarding investing in the stock market. Just because there are a lot of people out there in the same situation that Brit and I were in a couple years ago. They feel like they've maybe finally gotten their finances in order. They're ready to take the next step and put some money in the stock market or do some investing. Maybe they're just curious about what things look like or what to expect, or maybe they're scared like we were a couple years ago. So we wanted to make this video, explain things, and just kind of get things out there.
Mike and I have only been investing for about 2 years, and we are by no means experts when it comes to investing. Also, we're not financial advisors or investment advisors, so please keep that in mind. This is just our experience.
So let's rewind the clock a few years back to 2018. In 2018, Brittany and I were just getting back on our feet from a very bad year financially. We had lost our jobs, we had lost a lot of money in the process. We'd had to live with my mom for about a year to kind of recoup some money and get back on our feet.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of 2018, this was the time when we were finally making enough money to rent an apartment of our own and start saving some money for a house, which is exactly what we did.
We spent the entire years of 2018 and 2019 saving as much money as we could for a down payment on a house. We did this by keeping our heads down, working as much as we could, being very strict with our spending, and living pretty boring lives. We did, however, take a few vacations, but we also sacrificed buying a lot of things that we wanted. By the end of 2019, we were in a very solid place financially.
We had a decent income, we had a 6-month emergency fund, we had $40,000 saved up for a down payment on a house on top of our emergency fund, and we also had a little bit of extra operating cash on the side. Little did we know, however, that by living this way for 2 years, we were actually building a very strong foundation to invest later on down the line, even though that wasn't our intention. Our intention was to save for a house. But this allowed us to save the vast majority of the cash that we used for funding our investment portfolio. But we'll get into that over the next few minutes. So by the end of 2019, this is when we started our journey into the investing world. It was very slow at first, but this is when all the hype started developing, like around Robinhood and other free trading apps that you could like buy and sell stocks without any commissions or things like that. So we started researching different brokerages like Robinhood and others. We started researching different investment strategies like dividend investing or growth investing. But again, we didn't dive too heavily into this because we were both working at the time. We were still saving as much money as we could for a house.
So in February of 2020, we decided to download the Robinhood app, and they're not a sponsor, by the way. And in doing this, we got a few free stocks. It was then that we could have put more money onto the app, but we decided not to.
This is something that we should have done in hindsight. We had the extra money to invest, but we were just so fearful of like opening up our savings to any type of risk whatsoever. But what we did do is we kept learning, we kept researching the stock market, investing, we just kept learning those ticker symbols. Speaking of Robinhood, we will leave our Robinhood link down below. If you want a free stock, you can click that link, sign up. They'll give you like $5 or $6 to buy a share or a partial share of many different stocks. So you can check that out if you want to. Next, this is a big item. We finally bought our first house.
Yep.
This was in February 2020 as well. We spent a decent amount of our cash reserves on the down payment. We were so happy to finally, after 7 years of marriage or around there, like finally have a house of our own that we could decorate and furnish, and like we no longer had to be renting.
We also learned a lot about the home buying process and what to put in a home for resale. So we looked at this house as also an investment opportunity. So for us, looking back on it, and while we were buying our house, it was an investment.
About a month after this, in March 2020, is when we invested our first $1,000 on Robinhood into the stock market. If you guys remember, March of 2020 was the bottom or very close to the bottom of the stock market after all the shutdowns and there were any Rona and things like that. But again, we could have invested more. We should have invested more.
And fear held us back again.
Yeah. If we had, we could have invested $10,000 into pretty much anything at this point and like 5 to 10x our money. Like it didn't really matter what we had put our money in because everything was bottomed out at that point. The reason we were so fearful is because we had gotten into such a strong habit of saving money for the last, basically our entire marriage. Like we saved money to pay off all of our debt. We saved money for an emergency fund, and then we had to save money for another emergency fund, and then we had to save money for a house. And this was our lives for 7 years. Like all we did was save money. This was all we knew. So that's kind of why we were so afraid of like opening up our savings to any type of risk whatsoever.
And trying something new. We hadn't invested before. By November of 2020, about 8 months later, we finally mustered up enough courage to put more money into the stock market.
And in the meantime, we had done what we always do. We worked, we kept our heads down, and we saved money.
Yep.
And this was during all the shutdowns, so saving money was kind of like a necessity at this point.
So we opened up some accounts at a larger brokerage, and between November and December of 2020, we had invested $12,000 into the market, and this was because we wanted to fully fund both of our Roth IRAs.
Yeah, so $6,000 for Brittany, $6,000 for me, $12,000 total. A few months later, in March of 2021, is when some profound things started clicking in Brittany's and my minds regarding how we had been living. We had been studying more, we had been reading more, we had been watching that initial $1,000 we put into Robinhood grow, we had been watching our Roth IRAs grow. What we realized is if we just kept saving money and not done anything else, if we kept being safe, if we kept playing the safe game, if we kept staying in our comfort zone, if we kept not taking risks, we'd never be able to retire. Like, we'd work till we're 90 years old.
Yeah.
And we were like, we're not having that. Like, we don't want to do that.
Yeah, we realized our money wasn't going to grow or even keep up with the rate of inflation if it just sat in our bank account.
So 1 month later, in April of 2021, we invested another $13,000. Now, this was not into our Roth IRAs. This was into individual companies, this time like Microsoft and Apple for the most part.
And not too long after this, we had a really tough decision we had to make.
Not to get too much into the details, but ever since moving into our house, there had been some things going on that made it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to work from home and really enjoy the space we lived in. We tried to fix it. We spent a lot of time trying to fix it, and nothing worked. It wasn't really a decision that we wanted to make, but it was more of a decision we felt like we had to make for our own well-being. We decided to sell the house.
Fortunately, however, this coincided with the crazy housing market we're still living in, and we were able to sell and double the cash investment we had in our house.
It wasn't too long after selling that we were like, we're going all in, baby. No more of this fear. No more allowing fear to hold us back. No more playing it safe. No more risk aversion. Almost every extra dollar we had, whether that be extra savings, extra income, profits we made from the house, we invested all of that into the stock market over the next 6 months or so. And I think that was somewhere around $85,000. And this is both into individual companies and also index funds. We also funded our Roth IRAs for 2021. And so now, here we are, 21 months after we invested that first $1,000 with $126,000 investment portfolio. About $125,000 of that is in our larger brokerage accounts, and we still have the $1,000 on Robinhood. Although we've transferred some things out of Robinhood, we've also sold some things as well. So over the last year or so is when we've been investing most of this money, and even really the last just 6 months is when most of this portfolio we've funded. That being said, we've put in $111,000 and we've profited $15,000. So overall, 13.5% gain. In terms of like matching our portfolio's performance against the S&P 500's performance this year, I think the S&P 500 is up about 26% or so. It's very difficult to compare our portfolio to the S&P 500 though, because it's not like we invested all the cash we have at the beginning of the year. It's been done throughout the entire year, and most of it just over the last 6 months. If I were to take a guess, I'd say we were very closely matching the S&P 500, maybe a little bit above, maybe a little bit below, just because like what we're invested in is just S&P 500 stuff. Speaking of what we're invested in, our investment thought process, at least so far, has been just index funds and solid individual companies. The index funds we're in, they just pretty much track the entire market or certain sectors of the market. So for example, VTI, that tracks the entire stock market. And we're in a information technology fund, VGT. We have a little bit of money in there just because we think information technology companies and tech companies will play a very strong role in society over the next 10 or 20 years. And in terms of individual companies, we're just buying companies with strong fundamentals that make a lot of cash, that make great products that a lot of people use. So companies like Apple, Microsoft, Google. And after we buy, we just hold and we sit back and let the companies work for us. That's pretty much what we do. We just buy and hold.
We also have some smaller positions in smaller companies that we think will grow very well over the next 3 to 5 years. These are more speculative, and it only accounts for a small portion of our portfolio.
If you guys want to see a breakdown of our entire portfolio, we'll link a video up here you guys can check out. It's a few months old, so it's not like the most up to date, but it's pretty close. The last closing remark that we'll make has to do with fear. If there has been one thing in Brittany's and my life that has held us back from anything that we wanted to do or wanted to attempt to do, it has been fear. Fear has prevented us from making so many decisions. It's crazy. It's so unhealthy. It's not logical. It's more emotional, but it's reality. The only way we have found to get over it is just to do the thing that you're fearful of. And eventually, after so many times of doing it, you won't be afraid anymore. you'll be like, that was kind of stupid of me to be afraid of that. Guys, we hope you enjoyed this video. We hope it was informative or educational or entertaining in some way. If you did enjoy it, please give us a huge thumbs up. It helps out with the algorithm tremendously.
Also, you can subscribe for more and follow us on Instagram at Brit. We post there every now and then.
Yeah, thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Bye.